Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the 20th of December, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar, which coincides with the 11th of the 10th month on our Creator's calendar. And we're continuing with our reading and study of the book of Debarim or Deuteronomy. I believe we left off here on chapter 6. And this, again, this is in the 11th month of the 40th year of their wilderness journey, where Moshe has helped them overcome Og of Bashan and Sihon, king of the Amorites, and they've taken over those areas on the eastern side of the Yarden. They're about to go over the the Jordan or the Yarden River to Jericho, and they'll be keeping Pesach and taking that place out accordingly. But before they do, in the 11th month, Moshe is recapitulating and recapping everything that they've gone through until that time. So he's on the end of the law is obedience and an exhortation there too. We know that it says the end of the law is Mashiach, and Mashiach was obedient unto his father in everything, even unto death, as an example or a type of what Yitzhak was to Abram when he was told to offer him up. But it says, and these are the commands and the ordinances and the judgments, as many as Yahuwah our Elohim gave commandment to teach you to do so in the land on which you enter to inherit it, that you may fear Yahuwah your Elohim, keep you all his ordinances and his commandments, which I command you today, you and your sons and your sons' sons, all the days of your life. Doesn't matter where you are, but it was meant for us to keep the land if we kept the law. And remember, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom did not keep the law, and they did not keep the land, but were kicked out of it. It says that you may fear Yahuwah your Elohim and keep you all his ordinances and his commandments, which I command you today, you and your sons and your sons' sons, all the days of your life, that you may live many days. Shema, or hear, therefore, Yisrael, and observe to do them, that it may be well with you, and that you may be greatly multiplied. As Yahuwah Elohim of your fathers said that he would give you a land flowing with milk and honey. And these are the ordinances and the judgments which Yahuwah commanded the children of Yisrael in the wilderness when they had gone forth from the land of Mitzrayim. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah our Elohim, Yahuwah is one. It says is one Yahuwah here, and it says is one Yahuwah here. But if you look at the Hebrew, it says Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Elohinu, Yahuwah Achad. So there is no one there, but it doesn't say one Yahuwah. It says Yahuwah is one, if you wanted to put it literal. But either way. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your mind, and with all your inner being, and with all your strength. And these words, all that I command you this day, shall be in your heart and in your inner being. And you shall teach them to your children, and you shall speak of them sitting in your house, and walking by the way, and lying down, and rising up. And you shall fasten them for a sign upon your hand, and it shall be immovable before your eyes. Now, if you remember correctly, the pattern in scripture is literal, physical, then spiritual. You have the first Adam is fleshly, then the last Adam is the life-giving Ruach, as an example. You have the physical creation account of the things literally made in those days, and then the spiritual fulfillment of them. You have the literal sojournings of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, and then the spiritual fulfillment of them in their children. You have that pattern of physical, literal first, then spiritual afterwards. It's inverted or flipped around by those that reject the truth, where they literalize the spiritual and they spiritualize the literal. You see it first in the Yahudim that rejected him, by where he says you make frontlets between your eyes and you tie them, bind them around your arm. They literally do these things instead of figuratively, when it ought to be the things that he said to do should be actively engaged in. They tie straps literally around their arm. In that same way, the Nicolaitans hyper literalize the spiritual things and they spiritualize the literal. So if you see that stuff, hopefully you'll be able to recognize why it's done, because it's counter to the truth, and the enemy can only kill, steal, and destroy. This is, and you shall write them, on the lintels of your houses and of your gates. And it shall come to pass when Yahuwah your Elohim shall have brought you into the land which he sware to your fathers, to Abraham and to Yitzhak and to Jacob, to give you great and beautiful cities which you did not build, houses full of all goods which you did not fill, wells dug in the rock which you did not dig, vineyards and olive yards which you did not plant. Then having eaten and been filled, beware lest you forget Yahuwah your Elohim that brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You shall fear Yahuwah your Elohim, and him only shall you serve, and you shall cleave to him, and by his name you shall swear. Go you not after the mighty ones of the nations round about you. For Yahuwah your Elohim, and just so you know, this is the word Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. It's quite often that the Father is given a plural for the title Elohim, but it's also in a singular form as El or Eloah. El Elyon is the El Most High, but they have different ways it's pronounced or it's said. These ones are generally known as plural and lowercase by context. It says, but go you not after the mighty ones, or Elohim of the nations round about you. For Yahuwah your Elohim in the midst of you is El Kana, or a jealous El, lest Yahuwah your Elohim be very angry with you and destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahuwah your Elohim as you tempted him in the temptation, which we read about in the wilderness journey, right? How they tempted him in the wilderness. You shall by all means keep the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, the testimonies and the ordinances which he commanded you. And you shall do that which is pleasing in Tov before Yahuwah your Elohim, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and inherit the good land, which Yahuwah sware to your fathers, to chase all your enemies from before your face, as Yahuwah said. And it shall come to pass when your son shall ask you at a future time, saying, what are the testimonies and the ordinances and the judgments which Yahuwah our Elohim commanded us? Then you shall say to your son, we were servants or slaves, Obadim, to Pharaoh in the land of Mitzrayim, and Yahuwah brought us forth thence with a mighty hand and with a high arm. And Yahuwah wrought signs and great and grievous wonders in Mitzrayim, on Pharaoh, and on his house before us. And he brought us out thence to give us this land which he sware to give to our fathers. And Yahuwah charged us to observe all these ordinances, to fear Yahuwah our Elohim, that it may be well with us forever. that we may live even as today, or as even today, rather. And there shall be mercy to us if we take heed to keep all these commands before Yahuwah our Elohim, as he has commanded us. There will be mercy if. It's always conditional. And he says if you don't heed him, if you won't hear his voice, if you call on another, he's going to say after your power is gone and you're crying out for help, he says, call on that one that you sought for and see if he helps you. And then see now that I am he and there is no other Elohim apart from me. But until we recognize that, we're going to be left to the chaos of our own making for all the mess that's going on. There's a lot of people that sincerely call on the wrong names and don't know better, but that doesn't mean they don't have problems in their life because his word is true and he is trustworthy even when we're not. So it's something we have to be mindful of, and it's only in our interest to help share the truth with others if we can. Chapter 7 says, all communion with the nations is forbidden, and that means the Canaanites in the land with them, for fear of idolatry, for the set apartness of the people, for the nature of Elohim in his mercy and justice, for the assuredness of victory which Elohim will give over them. All right, in chapter 7, it says, and when Yahuwah your Elohim shall bring you into the land into which you go to possess it, and shall remove great nations from before you, the Hittite and the Girgashite, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Pezerite, and the Hivite, and Jebusite, 7 nations more numerous and stronger than you. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but just so no one's confused, all of them were Canaanites. So the reason why the Canaanites are separate here is because there were original indigenous ones that stayed in that promised land, and there were some that left that area and went into Egypt. These ones were the shepherd kings of Egypt, or the Hyksos, that ended up, even during the lifetime of Atoth and Mitzrayim, they were fighting amongst themselves, it mentions. And you can even see this in Yobelim, that the generations after Noach, even after he was alive, they started having problems and doing evil to one another. And shortly after his death, they were already fighting. But these Canaanites were pushed back into the land, and that was around the time that Abram and Lot were no longer having room for themselves and they were separating. And then they were mentioned amongst the others that had already stayed there. It says, and Yahuwah your Elohim shall deliver them into your hands, then you shall smite them, you shall utterly destroy them, you shall not make a covenant with them, neither shall you pity them, neither shall you contract marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to his son, and you shall not take his daughter to your son, for he will draw away your son from me, and he will serve other Elohim. And Yahuwah will be very angry with you, and will soon utterly destroy you. But thus shall you do to them. You shall destroy their altars, and shall break down their pillars, and shall cut down their groves, and shall burn with fire the graven images of their mighty ones. For you are a kadosh, or set apart, a separated people, to Yahuwah your Elohim. And Yahuwah your Elohim chose you to be to him a peculiar people, or what they call the word segula there, a treasured possession beyond all nations that are upon the face of the earth. It was not because you are more numerous than all nations that Yahuwah preferred you, and Yahuwah made choice of you, for you are fewer in number than all nations. But because Yahuwah loved you, and as keeping the oath which he sware to your fathers, Yahuwah brought you out with a strong hand, and Yahuwah redeemed you from the house of bondage, out of the hand of Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. You shall know, you shall know therefore that Yahuwah, your Elohim, he is Elohim, a trustworthy El who keeps covenant and mercy for them that love him, and for those that keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and who recompenses them that hate him to their face to destroy them utterly, and will not be slack with them that hate him. He will recompense them to their face. You shall, and people don't really regard how this can be true, but if you remember, he can open the minds of all men. He can turn them however he pleases. If you read the accounts of the Maccabees, there's a story of the Ptolemy, or one of the leaders in Egypt, trying to get the pious people to be trampled by elephants on multiple occasions. And because they were not offensive to anyone, they were innocent and meek, and they prayed for intercession, they were delivered, and Yahuwah turned the mind of that man multiple times so where he looked mad to his own people. But his chosen were protected. And if he can turn the minds of a king like that, he can turn our minds too. He can prevent you from knowing him. It says very clearly in the recognitions of Clement that Yahushua Mashiach, being a foreteller and in the minds of all men, knows when the mind is prepared for him, and he makes himself available to those that he knows are worthy of it. It even mentions that in the Basora, or the Good News accounts, if you remember, where he says he has no need of any man to witness of him because he knows the minds of all men. He knows what is in them. Excuse me. It says, and you shall keep therefore the commands and the ordinances and these judgments which I command you this day to do. And it shall come to pass when you shall have heard these ordinances, and shall have kept and done them, that Yahuwah your Elohim shall keep for you the covenant and the mercy, which he sware to your fathers. And he will love you, and barak you, and multiply you, and he will barak the offspring of your body, and the fruit of your land, your corn, and your wine, and your oil, the herds of your oxen, and the flocks of your sheep, on the land which Yahuwah sware to your fathers to give to you. You shall be Baruch beyond all nations. There shall not be among you an impotent or barren one, or among your cattle. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall remove from you all sickness, and none of the evil diseases of Mitzrayim, which you have seen, and all that you have known, he will lay upon you, but he will lay them upon all them, or all that hate you. And you shall eat all the spoils of the nations which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you. Your eye shall not spare them, and you shall not serve their mighty ones, for this is an offense to you. But if you should say in your heart, this nation is greater than I, how shall I be able to destroy them utterly? You shall not fear them. You shall surely remember all that Yahuwah your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all the Mitzrayites, the great temptations which your eyes have seen, those signs and great wonders, the strong hand and the high arm, how Yahuwah your Elohim brought you forth, so Yahuwah your Elohim will do to all the nations whom you fear in their presence. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall send against them the hornets until they that are left and they that are hidden from you be utterly destroyed. And this has gone over again in greater detail in what's called Chokmah Shalomo, or the Wisdom of Solomon, where he talks about the mercy of Elohim, that if he was so patient in destroying the wicked nations, and he showed great clemency and gave them time for repentance, how much more would he be merciful and patient with his own creature, the ones that he's working to make into his own image and likeness? And you shall not be wounded before them, because Yahuwah your Elohim in the midst of you is a great and powerful El. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall consume these nations before you, little by little. You shall not be able to consume them speedily, lest the land become desert, and the wild beasts of the field be multiplied against you. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall deliver them into your hands, and you shall destroy them with great destruction, until you shall have utterly destroyed them. And he shall deliver their kings into your hands, and you shall destroy their name from that place. None shall stand up in opposition before you, until you shall have utterly destroyed them. You shall burn with fire the graven images of their Elohim. You shall not covet silver, neither shall you take to yourself gold from them, lest you should offend thereby, because it is an abomination to Yahuwah your Elohim. And you shall not bring an abomination into your house, so should you be an accursed thing like it. You shall utterly hate it, and altogether abominate it, because it is an accursed thing. And I think people are they're pretty finical. I'm sorry, saying that right. A lot of individuals are very fickle when it comes to the things that they have or what they bring into their own house. But there is a brother, a late brother, John Todd, that talked about how the music industry would put demons in every copy that they would make of a master copy of a particular soundtrack or record, because those things were not of our creator and actually evil in their morals and disposition. It had nothing to do with him. It was everything to do with the evil one, and he was allowed to do that. So everyone that would bring these things into their home, when they were otherwise believers, sincere, and not doing wrong, because they brought an accursed item in, they were allowed to have problems. It is a very serious thing. And if you can do it with a CD just because it's got cuss words and it's not about the Bible, how much more any profane item, especially images or crosses or anything like that? People might think it's a thing that venerates their creator, but that's not what scripture says. And we ought to hold to his word and not just things in our mind, right? Chapter 8, an exhortation to obedience in regard of Elohim's dealing with them. And just for context, I'm not judging anybody. I have a cross tattooed on my back. I have multiple tattoos I got before I knew better. It doesn't make it right or acceptable. These are all wrong. It's literally defiling his dwelling place. It's not something we ought to do. But my point is, if you have these things and you're just learning it, it's your opportunity to show you love your maker by casting it away. See if it's so, check out what his word says, and then act accordingly. And he will reciprocate that willing obedience and measure of goodwill towards him right back at you, right? But chapter 8, it says, you shall observe to do all the commands which I charge you today, that you may live and be multiplied and enter in and inherit the land, which Yahuwah your Elohim sware to your fathers. And you shall remember all the way which Yahuwah your Elohim led you in the wilderness, that he might afflict you and try you, and that the things in your heart might be made manifest, whether you would keep his commandments or no. And he afflicted you and straitened you with hunger, and fed you with manna, which your fathers knew not, that he might teach you that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim shall man live. Your garments grew not old from you, off you. Your shoes were not worn off of you, or worn from off you. Your feet were not hardened or swollen, lo, these 40 years. And you shall know in your heart that as if any man should chasten his son, so Yahuwah your Elohim will chasten you. And you shall keep the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. For Yahuwah your Elohim will bring you into a tove and extensive land, where there are torrents of waters, and fountains of deep places issuing through the plains and through the mountains, what we would call primary water sources. A land of wheat and barley, vines, figs, pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land on which you shall not eat your bread with poverty, and you shall not want anything upon it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of its mountains you shall dig brass, and you shall eat and be filled, and shall Barak Yahuwah, or bless Yahuwah your Elohim, on the Tov land, which he has given you. Take heed to yourself that you forget not Yahuwah your Elohim, so as not to keep his commands and his judgments, his ordinances, which I command you this day, lest when you have eaten and are full, and have built tov or goodly houses and dwelt in them, and your oxen and your sheep are multiplied to you, and your silver and your gold are multiplied to you, and all your possessions are multiplied to you, you should be exalted in heart, and forget Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage, who brought you through the great and terrible wilderness, where the biting serpent and scorpion and drought, where there was no water, who brought you a fountain of water out of the flinty rock, who fed you with manna in the wilderness, which you knew not, and your fathers knew not, that he might afflict you, and thoroughly try you, and do you tov in your latter days. Lest you should say in your heart, my strength and the power of my hand have wrought for me this great wealth. But you shall remember Yahuwah your Elohim, that he gives you strength to get wealth, even that he may establish his covenant, which Yahuwah sware to your fathers as at this day. And it shall come to pass, if you do at all forget Yahuwah your Elohim, and should go after other mighty ones and serve them, and worship them, I call Shamayim and earth to witness against you this day, that you shall surely perish. As also the other nations which Yahuwah Elohim destroys before your face, so you shall perish, because you hearkened not to the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim. And there's quite a few places where he reiterates, right there in the beginning of Yobelim chapter 2, he would have, so before their 40-year wilderness journey, when Yahushua was on the mountain speaking face to face with him, and he dictated the book of Yobelim, he directly mentioned these things, that the children would go apostate, they would be scattered throughout the nations, and they would have all this stuff happen before they would be regathered again into the land. So it was foreknown to him, and he was telling them about these things even now, 40 years afterwards. But chapter 9, it says Moshe dissuades them from from the opinion of their own righteousness by rehearsing their several rebellions. And this is something that we want to keep in mind, where Abraham proved righteous through 10 trials, as well as Jacob and Yahusuf, and all of them got the benefits of those. The children have not always been true and have failed in the trials and the tasks set before us by mumbling, grumbling, complaining, not trusting in him, or what have you, not obeying the word, right? So we don't want to continue in that form of disobedience, but to turn from it. So it says, Shema Yisrael, you go this day across the Yarden to inherit nations greater and stronger than yourselves, cities great and walled up to the Shamayim, a people great and many and tall, the sons of Anak, whom you know, and concerning whom you have heard. Who can stand before the children of Anak? And you shall know today that Yahuwah your Elohim, he shall go before your face. He is a consuming fire. He shall destroy them, and he shall turn them back before you, and shall destroy them quickly, as Yahuwah said to you. Speak not in your heart, when Yahuwah your Elohim has destroyed these nations before your face, saying, for my righteousness Yahuwah brought me in to inherit this Tov land, not for your righteousness, nor for the set apartness of your heart, do you go in to inherit their land, but because of the iniquity of these nations, Yahuwah will destroy them from before you, and that he may establish the covenant which Yahuwah sware to our fathers, to Abraham, and to Yitzhak, and to Jacob. And you shall know today that it is not for your righteousness, Yahuwah your Elohim gives you this good land to inherit, for you are a stiff-necked people. Remember, forget not how much you provoked Yahuwah your Elohim in the wilderness, from the day that you came forth out of Mitzrayim, even till you came into this place, you continued to be disobedient toward Yahuwah. So here's another witness to the fact that they did not walk right the entire 40 years, right? It wasn't until that last year at the Day of Atonement, where the last of those men of battle fell, that they had a change and they were starting to be obedient in full to the word again. And they started keeping Pesach that very next year, the year of release when they go into the land. It says also in Horeb, you provoked Yahuwah, and Yahuwah was angry with you to destroy you. When I went up into the mountain to receive the tables of stone, the tables of the covenant, which Yahuwah made with you, and I was in the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread, and I drank no water. And Yahuwah gave me the 2 tables of stone written with the finger of Elohim, and on them there had been written all the words which Yahuwah spoke to you in the mountain in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass after 40 days and 40 nights, Yahuwah gave me the 2 tables of stone, the tables of the covenant. And Yahuwah said to me, arise, go down quickly from hence, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim have transgressed. They have gone aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them, and have made themselves a molten image. And Yahuwah spoke to me, saying, I have spoken to you once again, I have spoken to you once and again, saying, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. And now suffer me utterly to destroy them, and I will blot out their name from under Shamayim, and will make of you a nation great and strong, and more numerous than they. And I turned, and I went down from the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to Shamayim, and the two tables of the testimonies, or witnesses, were in my two hands. And when I saw that you had sinned against Yahuwah your Elohim, and made to yourselves a molten image, and had gone astray out of the way which Yahuwah commanded you to keep, then I took hold of the two tables, and cast them out of my two hands, and broke them before you. Just one moment. All right, so I was just reminded right here, this was the incident with the golden calf, and there's some stuff going around right now where people believe that this is not related to a festival that was dedicated to him, where they think that it was just to some pagan mighty ones that the people went back to apostatize, and the golden calf had nothing to do with trying to keep a festival to our Creator. Never mind, it says in Exodus that they are making a feast to Yahuwah with the Elohim that was made. But people want to misconstrue that using English translations and tricky stuff. However, when we just look at what's written and we look at everything that we can find on the topic, you have an answer that is quite clear. This is from the Apostolic Constitutions, Book 5. I believe this is part of Section 3. I might be off on that, but there's multiple sections here that cover the heresies that had been brought up from the beginning of creation. Okay? This part right here says, just to show you that it was a feast to Elohim, and they intentionally were equating him as the calf. It mentions it right here. So it says, therefore, he says, if you desire to offer, do not offer to me as to one that stands in need of it, for I stand in need of nothing. For the world is mine and the fullness thereof. But when this people became forgetful of that, and called upon a calf as Elohim, instead of the true El, and to him did ascribe the cause of their coming out of Egypt, saying, these are your mighty ones, or these are your Elohim, Yisrael, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt. And when these men had committed wickedness with the similitude of a calf that eats hay, and denied Elohim who had visited them by Moshe in their afflictions, and had done signs with his hand and rod, and had smitten the Egyptians with 10 plagues, who had divided the waters of the Reed Sea into two parts, who had led them in the midst of the water, as a horse upon the ground, who had drowned their enemies, and those that laid in wait for them, who at Marah had made sweet the bitter fountain, who had brought water out of the sharp rock till they were satisfied, who had overshadowed them with the pillar of the cloud on account of the immoderate heat, and with a pillar of fire which enlightened and guided them when they knew not the way where they were to go, who gave them manna from Shamayim, and gave them quails for flesh from the sea, who gave them the Torah in the mountain, whose voice he had vouchsafed to let them hear. Him did they deny, and said to Aharon, make us mighty ones who shall go before us. And they made a molten calf, and sacrificed to an idol. Then was Elohim angry, as being ungratefully treated by them, because they did the very thing he said not to, but tried to make it a festival to Yahuwah, right? And he bound them with bonds which could not be loosed, the added bonds of transgression, because they'd done that, perpetual offerings that were mandatory instead of if and conditional, which we've already covered, right? And he bound them with bonds that could not be loosed, with a mortifying burden and a hard collar, and no longer said, if you make, but make an altar, and sacrifice perpetually, for you are forgetful and ungrateful. All right, just to recap, that was the reason for it there. But the fact that it was a festival to Yahuwah was directly in the text there. It doesn't mean that it was not to him literally. You can see that it's not. And that's another thing that some people I've seen, and I don't point fingers and talk out directly. I'm mentioning this because it's prevalent on the internet. Some people will also say that, um, where is that? Oh, sorry about it. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to go back here. Some people will also say that the calling on the Lord or Baal is equivalent, or calling on God when you should know better is the equivalent of calling on him. And they will do that contrary to what is plainly in the text there. You go back to Second Kings, was it 18 and 19 with Eliyahu there? I believe that might be the chapters. I could be wrong. You feel free to correct me if you know better. But where Eliyahu is contesting with the 450 priests of Baal, he makes it very clear that the two are not equated with one another. You have to worship the one because he is not the same. And the people were mistakenly, wrongly mixing the two and were under judgment for it. But we'll go back to Deuteronomy here and continue. So it says, Then I took hold of the two tablets and cast them out of my two hands and broke them before you. And I made my petition. This is the word, the covenant, the word being broken on our behalf because we broke the covenant, the physical teaching the spiritual. And I made my petition before Yahuwah as also at the first 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread and I drank no water on account of all your sins which you sinned in doing evil before Yahuwah Elohim to provoke him. And I was greatly terrified because of the wrath and anger, because Yahuwah was provoked with you utterly to destroy you. Yet Yahuwah hearkened to me at this time also. And he was angry with Aharon to destroy him utterly, and I prayed for Aharon also at that time. And your sin which you had made, the calf I took and burnt it with fire, and pounded it, and grounded it till it became fine, and it became like dust. And I cast that dust into the brook and descended from that descended from the mountain. Also in the burning and in the temptation and at the graves of lust, you provoked Yahuwah. And when Yahuwah sent you forth from Kadesh Barnea, saying, Go up and inherit the land which I give to you, then you disobeyed the word of Yahuwah your Elohim, and and believed him not, and hearkened not to his voice, which means it was not accounted to them as a righteous thing, unlike their forefather. You were disobedient in the things relating to Yahuwah from the day in which he became known to you. And I prayed before Yahuwah 40 days and 40 nights, the number that I prayed, for Yahuwah said that he would utterly destroy you. And I prayed to Elohim and said, Yahuwah, King of Elohim, destroy not your people and your inheritance whom you did redeem, whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. With your great power and with your strong hand and with your high arm. Remember Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob your servants, to whom you swear by yourself. Look not upon the hardness of heart of this people, and their impieties and their sins. Lest the inhabitants of the land whence you brought us out speak, saying, Because Yahuwah could not bring them into the land of which he spoke to them, and because he hated them, has he brought them forth to slay them in the wilderness. And these your people, and your portion whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim, with your great strength, and with your mighty hand, and with your high arm. Now, we see it in different places as well, where Moshe petitions Yahuwah for his name's sake, that he will forgive the people, so that the nations won't mistakenly think wrong about his greatness, not for what the people have done, not for any benefit that he's accomplished, but for his great name, to have mercy on them. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. It is only for it's his gift alone that we even have belief. And there's nothing of ourselves. It is only of ourself that we can be willingly obedient to the truth given to us. But that doesn't mean anything. No one's given anything greater. There's nothing of ourselves to make us boast. The whole point is that everyone be humble and that Yahuwah alone be exalted in that day, as it is written, right? Chapter 10, it says, Elohim's mercy in restoring the two tables, in continuing the kahuna, in separating the tribe of Lewi, in hearkening unto Moshe's suit for the people, an exhortation unto obedience. And you can see here, this fits the pattern of what we're reading. If you go back to the Exodus videos that we made, we mentioned that the books themselves are out of chronological order. After Moshe coming up to the mountain and the breaking the tablets, or even before then, it has you giving instructions for the witness of the tabernacle and Aharon being made Kohen and things like that before any of the golden calf incident even happened. So we know that that's not how it went. And if you go back to our videos, we put it in the correct order and we read through it so that it made sense. But he's telling you right here the same thing. It says, At that time, Yahuwah said to me, Hew for yourself 2 stone tables as the first, and come up to me into the mountain, and you shall make for yourself an ark of wood. And you shall write upon the tables the words which were on the first tables, which you did break, and you shall put them into the ark. So I made an ark of boards of incorruptible wood, which is called gopher wood, and gopher wood is cypress. It's the same word, the same letters, different pronunciation, but that's that wood that doesn't rot. And I hewed tables of stone like the first, and I went up to the mountain, and the 2 tables were in my hand. And he wrote upon the tables according to the first writing, the 10 commandments, or the 10 words, Dabarim, which Yahuwah spoke to you in the mountain out of the midst of the fire. And Yahuwah gave them to me. And that copy of the 10 commandments, or the 10 words written with his finger the second time, is the copy that is still in the Ark of the Covenant or on display next to them to this day, where Ron Wyatt took them out of the Ark at the behest of the messengers that were there. He recorded it, brought the video back to that area, and it is currently in that little room that is underneath Calvary, or Golgotha, if you will, where Yahushua had been impaled directly above it. And at the earthquake, the blood and water was able to come down onto the ark, fulfilling his offering as appropriate. He goes over that in detail in his own interviews. There's a book on the topic, so I don't want to go too far. I was just trying to make some context there. That is the copy that he witnessed and saw, and he picked up with his own hands and set, or it was taken from him and set on display. That is the copy that we will all be able to witness when the Sunday laws become enforced or punishable, not necessarily when they're first given. At least if what was mentioned is what actually happens. But we'll continue here. And it says, And I turned and came down from the mountain, and I put the tables into the ark which I had made, and there they were, as Yahuwah commanded me. And the children of Israel departed from Beeroth, of the sons of Joachim to Mazadai. There Aharon died, and there he was buried. And Eleazar his son was Kohen in his stead. And thence they departed to Gadgad. It says Gidgad in the other translation, or the other version there, excuse me. This one says Godah, and you can see it has the Godah for the vowel points there. But right here, it just says Gadgad. And from Gadgad to Ethbatha, a land wherein are torrents of water. At that time, Yahuwah separated the tribe of Lui, or those unto me, to bear the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, to stand near before Yahuwah, to minister and Barak in his name to this day. Now, the originally Lui, their forefather, was made Kohen, and then that was kind of taken out when they got out of this wilderness, and he was having every firstborn that opened the womb